Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hari Hari Bol. As I usually like to do, I'm going to read the translation to this beautiful bhajan that Prabhupada loves so much. Krishna is the lover of Radha. He displays many amorous pastimes in the groves of Vrindavan. He is the lover of the cowherd maidens of Raja and the holder of the great hill named Govardhana. He is the beloved son of Mother Yasoda, the delight of the inhabitants of Raja, and he wanders in the forests along the banks of the river Jamuna. Jai Radha Nasta Prayeshu Vajreshu Nicham Bhagavad Sevaya Bhagavate Tamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Nashtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome in the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, whose praise for transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Nityana Timirandasya Janangana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, everyone. We're reading from 3rd Canto, Chapter 3, verse 6. Sutam ride kam vapusha grasantam Drisva sunabon matitam daritra Amantritas tattanayaya sesham Dadvatad antapuram avivishesha Sutam ride kam vapusa grasantam Dristva sunabon matitam daritra Amantritas tattanayaya sesham Dadva tadanta puram avivesha. Sutam, sun. Ridhe, in the fight. Kam, the sky. Vapusha, by his body. Grisantam, while devouring. Dristva, seeing. Sunabha, by the Sudarshan wheel. Unmatitam, killed. Daritriya, by the earth. Amantrita, being prayed for. Tat Tanayaya, to the son of Narakasura. Sesham, that which was taken from. Datva, returning it. Tat, his. Antapuram, inside the house. Avivesha, entered. Translation. Narakasura, the son of Daritri, the earth, tried to grasp the whole sky, and for this he was killed by the Lord in a fight. His mother then prayed to the Lord. This led to the return of the kingdom to the son of Narakasura, and thus the Lord entered the house of the demon. Please repeat after me. Narakasura, the son of Daritri, the earth, tried to grasp the whole sky, and for this he was killed by the Lord in a fight. His mother then prayed to the Lord. This led to the return of the kingdom to the son of Narakasura, and thus the Lord entered the house of the demon. It's a very short purport, so I'll be speaking on this verse and the next verse as well. Purport. It is said in other Puranas that Narakasura was the son of Daritri, the earth, by the Lord himself. But he became a demon due to the bad association of Bana, another demon. An atheist is called a demon, and it is a fact that even a person born of good parents can turn into a demon by bad association. Birth is not always the criteria of goodness, unless and until one is trained in the culture of good association, one cannot become good. Very short purport, in fact it's I think 3 sentences, but it's got so much in it, it's very valuable. So this chapter is continuing the title, which is The Lord's Pastimes Out of Vrindavan. Previous chapter we talked about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. So this one's all about his pastimes outside of Vrindavan. So even though it's just 3 sentences, this purport, it contains everything or many things that are integral to the path of bhakti or devotional service. So, and what's that main point? Do we gather from that? Yes, all about association. Good association, bad association. So Narakasura was also called Bhausura, and it described in this verse that his mother, the earth, was created him when she came in contact with Varaha. So he's actually the son of Varaha. And even though he came from such amazing lineage, still by bad association he fell into demoniac behaviour. And his association that was his downfall was Banasura. He was a very powerful demon that had 1,000 arms. So we can see that very quickly we can be negatively influenced by our association. When we have the association of devotees, we feel very, very strong together. And when we're out there in the material world, we might have to work, might have to do so many things. It's very, very important to keep that connection somehow or other with the devotees. I know when I was working for a long time, it was, so important that I get my rounds chanted, and I could tell that by, that association of so many non-devotees, it wears you down. It's very wearing, so you've got to be very strong in your reading and in somehow or other keeping a connection with devotees. We're very fortunate here because we've got so many devotees around, and we're very close to the temple. So when I was living in Sydney, I was an hour's drive away, so it was, quite hard. So, we can ask why there's so many of these demoniac influences. And part of it, of course, is that, this is a prison house. Krishna has put us here, we wanted to be here. Krishna's created this so we can wake up, we can snap out of this dream that we've been living in for so many, crores and crores and crores of lifetimes. And Krishna, of course, he appears either personally or with his planetary portions to set things right. And there's that very famous verse in the Gita, Yada yada hi dhamasya vani bhavati bharata. Does anyone know the rest of it? Abhutanam dhamasya tadatmanam srijamyam. Wherever and whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. And Krishna actually likes a really good fight. This is very interesting in the purport that it says, in the verse, he was killed by the Lord in a fight. And we've all got that tendency that we like to, particularly if you're more of a Kshatriya type nature, which I think I probably am, that I enjoy martial arts, not that I practice it myself, but I love, seeing my sons practice martial arts. I remember many, many years ago I went to see a martial arts competition in the town hall. It was a kung fu competition, and it was so riveting, even when the blood was splattered on the white ring. So we all got that, not all, but Krishna also likes to fight, and he can't fight in the spiritual world because there's no demons, they're all great devotees. So he comes for many purposes. He defends the devotees, he kills the demons, and he enjoys a really good fight. And Narakasura and Banasura, they were all cooperating very nicely with Kamsa. Kamsa was so created so much fear that many of the demons were, yes, whatever you want. Like Putana, she had to just do what Kamsa wanted. But Banasura, for example, it's stated that in the 10th canto that Kamsa regarded him as my solid well-wisher. So somehow or other these demons were combining together, having a lot of fun in their association with each other. So Prabhupada explains in this purport that even if you come from a good family, you can be turned by bad association. So it's also interesting that we don't really understand how delicate that balance is, that tipping point. And it is very subtle. When you're associating with devotees who are fired up, who are chanting, who are reading Prabhupada's books daily, it really rubs off on us and you become inspired. Like Muktaram inspired me the other day. He said, Mataji, I'm going to try and come every day to the temple during Damodar Vrat. And
I would do that. I didn't say we do.
No, you said. And that really inspired me. I thought, right, well, I'm going to try and do that as well. I will not be doing it next week because I will not be here. But it's just these things that together we can really inspire each other. And it doesn't matter whether someone's been a devotee for 50 years or someone's been a devotee for 10 years or for 2 weeks. We can actually get inspiration from each other. It's very important. And of course, Narakasura's nefarious activities were numerous. He stole Aditi's beautiful earrings, and they were inlaid with gold, brilliant gold and precious gems. And for him to steal the earrings, he must have taken them off her. So that means he must have touched Indra's mother. And of course, this whole pastime is about his infamous behaviour of kidnapping the 16,100 virgin princesses who were daughters of kings, they were daughters of siddhas, they were very, very special ladies, young ladies, and he fought with the parents and stole these young girls away. And it's not like he installed them in a nice palace somewhere, he actually kept them in a dungeon. He wasn't very merciful. And he also stole other things. He stole Varuna's umbrella, and it's not the kind of umbrella we have outside hanging up there near the notice board that we keep the rain off our heads. That umbrella would have been an emblem of his status as a great demigod. So it would have been very beautiful and represented his prestige, so he stole that. And he also stole the demigod's playground, which was on top of Mount Mandara, and that was called the Mani Parvata, and the demigods used to sport there. And he even managed to get hold of that. And he took great pleasure, like lots of demons, in terrorizing all of the planetary systems. He was extending his power everywhere. And he also heard that Indra had thousands of celestial elephants, and he tried to steal those as well. So Indra felt very humiliated by this, and he went to Krishna and said, please, Krishna, this demon is becoming uncontrollable. Can you please annihilate him? He's stolen all of these things from us, and he's stolen these beautiful young girls, he's imprisoned them. So time for you to have a good fight and get rid of him. So, and Satyabhama, who was Krishna's wife, or one of his wives, was with him at the time. And she was getting a little upset that Krishna was suddenly going to leave her. So Krishna was, wanted to console her and make sure that she was satisfied. So he said, will you come with me? So she also went into the battle. And in Krishna book, Prabhupada writes about this. I'm just going to read it. It's in chapter 59. You can read it later on. Bhaumasura was also known as Narakasura, for he happened to be the son of the earth personified. When he saw that all his soldiers, commanders and fighters were killed on the battlefield by the strokes of the weapons of the personality of Godhead, he became exceedingly angry at the Lord. He then came out of the city with a great number of elephants who had all been born and brought up on the seashore. All of them were highly intoxicated. When they came out, they saw that Lord Krishna and his wife were beautifully situated high in outer space, just like a blackish cloud about the sky, glittering with the light of electricity. The demon Bhaumasura immediately released a weapon called Satagni, by which he could kill hundreds of warriors with one stroke, and simultaneously all his assistants also threw their respective weapons at the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna began to counteract all these weapons by releasing his feathered arrows. The result of this fight was that all the soldiers and commanders of Bhaumasura fell to the ground, their arms, legs and heads separated from their trunks, and all their horses and elephants also fell with them. In this way, all the weapons released by Bhaumasura were cut to pieces by the reaction of the Lord's arrows. And then Prabhupada goes into details how the Lord was fighting on the back of Garuda, and how Garuda also entered into the fray by, attacking the demon soldiers with his nails and sharp beak, and he was attacking the elephants as well. And Bhaumasura thus came to see that none of his tricks would act upon Krishna, and he became aware that all his attempts to kill Krishna would be frustrated. Yet he attempted for the last time, taking a trident in his hand to strike him. Krishna was so dexterous that before Bhaumasura could touch his trident, his head was cut off by the sharp Sudarshan chakra. His head, illuminated by earrings and helmets, fell down on the battlefield. On the occasion of Bhaumasura's being killed by Lord Krishna, all the demons' relatives began to scream in disappointment, and the saintly persons began to glorify the chivalrous activities of the Lord. Taking this opportunity, what did the demigods do? They showered flowers. The denizens of heaven showered flowers. So you can read that in full. It's a really exciting pastime. So, throughout the purport, as we were talking about, it's stressing good association and bad association. And we have to be vigilant. But what does that mean in avoiding bad association? Does it mean that we don't have anything to do with those people who are not devotees? If that was the case, then this movement wouldn't spread. It wouldn't happen. So in the Upadeshamrita, or the Nectar of Instruction, it describes the 6 principles favourable to devotional service. And the 5th one is abandoning this association of non-devotees. Does anyone know any of the others? Being enthusiastic. We want to be enthusiastic. Maintain that enthusiasm in our devotional service. Endeavouring with confidence. And what's that confidence? Confidence that Krishna will help me. My Guru Maharaj will help me. Srila Prabhupada will help me. That's endeavouring with confidence. Being patient. It's not that immediately you're going to learn everything. Within a week you'll know everything about Krishna consciousness. We're just patient and slowly endeavouring with that virtue of patience. It's not that we can expect to get results immediately. It takes time. And acting according to regulative principles, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, hearing and chanting and remembering Krishna. And then the 5th one, abandoning the association of non-devotees. And finally, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas, following in our parampara line. But what does that, it's worth thinking about that association. What is it? It's not that we think, oh, we're so wonderful, we're devotees of Krishna, and those who aren't devotees of Krishna are not so wonderful. We can't think like that. That wasn't Prabhupada's mood. Prabhupada's mood was that he loved everybody. because he had Samadarshana. He could see that all the living entities were equal. And that's why the Uttama Adhikari, or that devotee in the topmost platform, for the purpose of preaching, he comes down to the Madhyam platform, where he can see the difference between the innocent and the demoniac, or the atheists. And, rather we should think that Krishna's sitting in our hearts, Krishna's sitting in the heart of all living entities, and we should pray to the Paramatma in their hearts that please be open to what I'm trying to give you. And I remember when I was doing Sankirtan, I would do that. I would pray to Paramatma in their hearts, please, dear Lord, convince them to let me liberate some of their Lakshmi for the use in Krishna consciousness. So it's about trying to develop that attitude that I want to try and be compassionate to everybody and not be elitist, but at the same time to be careful about the association. And how do we be careful about that association? We do that by trying to give our association and not take theirs, but giving our association in a humble mood. Not that, oh, I'm so great and you're so low. That is not authentic, and that's not going to encourage anybody. So with our kind, loving, open hearts, we'll have a positive influence, and people can tell when someone's been dealing with them, or someone has an agenda that they have with them. And it's a very nice story if you ever watch the Prabhupada Memories on YouTube, and it's set in 1974, and one young devotee, Adi Parishdas, was actually Prabhupada's bodyguard, and Prabhupada would, at 1 o'clock, he'd put his light on and start his translating work. And this devotee recites how it was raining that day, and so he walked into the garage so he could shelter from the rain. And he didn't know that from the house, Prabhupada could walk down into the garage. So he's standing there guarding Prabhupada to make sure that Prabhupada was, no one would harm Prabhupada. And he suddenly turned around, and there's Prabhupada standing right there beside him. And he went, oh, Srila Prabhupada, he offered his obeisance and says, Srila Prabhupada, how may I serve you? What do you need? Do you need anything? And Prabhupada, and he describes it when he saw Prabhupada. He said Prabhupada was like a mountain. He was so serene. Just that great stillness that we know was part of Srila Prabhupada, that gravity. And Prabhupada said, when he said, how can I serve you? Prabhupada said, I want you to go where I cannot go. And the devotee was describing, well, Prabhupada he's going to, Tokyo next, and he's just come from another place, and what does he mean that I should go where he cannot go? He goes everywhere. He's always constantly travelling. And then Prabhupada said, I want you to go to the future. And to the future, Srila Prabhupada, yes, I want you to go to the future. And I want you to show people by how you act towards them how much Krishna loves them. And of course, the future means that Prabhupada's body was not going to be with us, another 3 years. And this boy was a young devotee, so Prabhupada knew that he would be around much, much, much longer. So that was an instruction. It's very beautiful. It's DVD 87, so you can go and see it. And Prabhupada was so authentic in all of his dealings with everybody, no matter they were professors, government dignitaries, someone's parents, or literally the bum in the street. Prabhupada was always so kind. And in 1968, Prabhupada wrote a letter to Satsvarup Maharaj about the importance of spiritual strength. This was written in 1968. Our relationship is eternal, but if somebody lags behind, so in spite of our internal relationship, one may not meet other at a destination. Just like a flock of birds, although very intimately related, every one of them has to fly in the sky by individual strength. If one is less strong, the other cannot keep him in the sky. That is the law of nature. So long as every one of us is strong in Krishna consciousness, there is no doubt you can fly in the spiritual sky and meet together without failure. Therefore, individual strength is most important. And that individual strength is achieved in the association of devotees. And then he continues. And in another letter, in 74, he wrote, I'm requesting my disciples to always stay in the association of devotees and to propagate the Sankirtan movement all over the world. So we know that by that example, you take a bunch of sticks, you take one out, you can break it. You have it all together, it's impossible to break. So staying spiritually strong isn't just about protecting our own self-interests, it's about protecting everyone else's. So we're all that little jigsaw piece, and we put it in the jigsaw, you know, one by one, and then it makes a complete picture. So it's very important. So we develop that spiritual strength by good sadhana, staying in association, praying to Lord Balaram is a source of all spiritual strength. And of course, you know, staying connected with Srila Prabhupada by reading his books. So we'll go on to the next verse. I'll just say, Tatrati tasta naradeva kanya kujena dristva barim adabandhum utaya savyo jabriku prahasya Vidan Uraga Prahitava Loke. And the translation is, this is verse 7, there in the house of the demon, all the princesses kidnapped by Narakasura at once became alert upon seeing the Lord, the friend of the distressed. They looked upon him with eagerness, joy and shyness and offered to be his wives. And then the purport. Another short one, a little bit longer though than the other one. Narakasura kidnapped many daughters of great kings and kept them imprisoned in his palace. But when he was killed by the Lord, and the Lord entered the house of the demon, all the princesses were enlivened with joy and offered to become his wives, because the Lord is the only friend of the distressed. Unless the Lord accepted them, there would be no chance of their being married, because the demon kidnapped them from their father's custody, and therefore no one would agree to marry them. According to Vedic society, girls are transferred from the custody of the father to the custody of the husband. Since these princesses had already been taken away from the custody of their fathers, it would have been difficult for them to have any husband other than the Lord himself. So in Vedic times, they had very strict rules about the protection of women. Young girls were protected by their father in their childhood. Then they were all married young. Then they were protected by their husband. And then when the husband took sannyas, they were protected by their, generally the eldest son. So there's this custodial kind of, handing down doesn't really happen very much in our current Kali Yuga society. You know, as young women, we have to obey. I can't say we now because I'm no longer a young woman, but they more or less have to fend for themselves in many cases. But this report reveals to us actually the importance of proper care for women. So even though a woman may not necessarily be under the protection of her father or the husband, but it's the duty of care of each of us to make sure that the women are protected and taken care of. And that's a particular goal of mine, to always make sure that ladies in particular but also all devotees are given that good shelter, and they're not falling victim to any kind of unscrupulous activity. So, Prabhupada explains there that only Krishna would accept them. And it's interesting when he married them, and Ramai Maharaj mentioned this yesterday, that Krishna actually expanded himself because he had 16,108 wives, the 8 principal wives, and these 16,100 princesses. But not only did he expand and marry each one individually, at the wedding ceremony, all of the relatives were present at the same time. So he married all of these princesses at the same time, simultaneously, in different places, but also by his mystic power, all of the relatives were there as well. I thought that was very, very interesting, because it was a proper marriage. So when you have a marriage, it's sad if not all of the members of the family can be there. So Krishna made sure that they were all present. And when we think about the importance of the role of the husband in the home, and the role of the woman is actually even more important, because she's the linchpin and she represents religiosity in the home. So if the woman in the home is setting a peaceful atmosphere where she's encouraging the children, the husband to engage in transcendental activities in the home, it's a very, very important role. She's actually the linchpin. And I was listening to a wonderful interview on the Books of the Basis series of interviews by Radhika Ramana Prabhu. Radhika Ramana is an exceptional devotee, very young PhD, and he was actually homeschooled by his mother, he and his younger brother, and she used the Bhagavatam as a basis of their education, and then alongside, mathematics, etc. So he was saying that role that his mother played was so important in his upbringing. His father was working. And these are some quotes that I'd like to read out. It's from a seminar that I put together called The Importance of Women in ISKCON. And in the Manu Smriti, which is the Laws of Manu, in chapter 3, 55 to 60, it states that a woman must be honoured and adorned by their fathers, brothers, husbands, and brothers-in-law who desire their own welfare. Where women are honoured, there the gods are pleased, but when they are not honoured, no sacred rite yields rewards. When the female relations live in grief, the family soon wholly perishes, but that family where they are not unhappy ever prospers. And in 4th canto, chapter 25, verse 36, Prabhupada says in the purport, the wife is the cause of all kinds of success in religion, economic development, sense gratification, and ultimately salvation. When one accepts a wife, it is to be understood that he's being helped in his progressive march toward liberation. And, Prabhupada had a very particular relationship with his female disciples, and he very much encouraged them. He said, these girls are preachers, and they are just as good as the boys. And sometimes we may get a little confused. We might read something in Bhagavatam, oh, women are less intelligent. Oh, what does that mean? And Prabhupada never treated his female disciples as less intelligent. And there's a very nice, which they are not. Women have a certain weakness, which is affecting emotional intelligence. So women can be, not always, but women can be victims of the flattery of unscrupulous men. But in terms of intelligence, in terms of ability to do everything, we can just see that there's no difference. And Prabhupada, I don't know if you've read the Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, and Shamashunda writes about an incident with Prabhupada that was very, very reflective of this. At the packed Pandal in Mayapur in February 1972, gathered for the ground-laying ceremony of Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, Prabhupada asked various devotees to speak, beginning with Mataji Devi Dasi. Asking a woman to speak at such an occasion flies in the face of age-old protocol, writes Shamashunda, and some of Prabhupada's godbrothers looked a little uptight. But most seemed happy to see this incredible new chapter opening for their deep-felt faith. And Malaji says, and then Prabhupada said, Malaji, you speak. Everybody was floored. I was floored, says Malaji. So what could I say? I'm just looking around. Here are all these learned Vaishnavas, all these very elevated sannyasis, certainly more learned than I'd ever be, she writes. I just stood up and spoke about Srila Prabhupada. I was not a pundit, but I had no hesitation about speaking on the glories of Srila Prabhupada, and it was actually the right thing to do at that time. And there's another really nice thing. Vishal Das, one of my godbrothers who unfortunately has passed away, he writes that I brought my wife to Bombay with me, and I said to Prabhupada in front of her, Srila Prabhupada, the brahmacharis for years have criticised the women, saying they're less intelligent, their brain is smaller, they're lustier, things like that. Is that true? And Prabhupada's answer was, you are chanting Hare Krishna, your wife is chanting Hare Krishna, where is the question of being less intelligent? I remember reading in Chaitanya Charitamrita, says Vishal, in Prabhupada's purport, the women in our movement are preaching, therefore they are as good as their brothers. Then I said to Prabhupada also, Prabhupada, I understand that the husband is the representative of a spiritual master, and the wife is representative of her husband. Srila Prabhupada, should she do everything I ask? And Prabhupada said, and you should be so arrogant? And that came from that last part came from remembrance by Yoda. And in Bhagavatam, there's so many verses that talk about how women are the inspiration, how women are more powerful than men, and the woman is, controls that power, that Shakti by her shyness. And Jagadhatri wrote to Prabhupada and saying that, how can we be so bold when we're out there on Sankirtan but remain humble in the temple? And he replied, be a lion on the chase, but a lamb at home. So the lion on the chase means when the lion's running after his prey, but then be a lamb at home. And on a morning walk, Prabhupada said to Dr. Patel, but these women, my disciples, are not ordinary women, they are preachers, they are Vaishnavas. By their association, one becomes a Vaishnava. So there's literally hundreds of these quotes of Prabhupada that, we can understand how Prabhupada respected and cherished and cared for his female disciples. And of course, by dint of that, all of the female devotees, all the Vaishnavis. And it's interesting that there's a neuroscientist called Luann Rizendine, and she wrote a book called The Female Brain. And she did confirm what the Sastra says, that a woman's brain is smaller in weight, size, physical size, but she said that a woman's brain has the same number of cells as a man's brain. They're just packed in tight. And she used the example of the analogy like a corset, because we don't wear corsets these days, but in previous days, women were, wore corsets that constricted the form. So the female brain is like that, same number of brain cells, just packed in tight. So we should understand that on the, even on the material platform, there's no inequality. The only difference is that women have this tendency to be emotionally affected by, flattery. It's very important that, we're mindful of that. So, Manasura's treatment of the captured princesses was his downfall. He abused women and he copped it. Krishna defeated him. So the proper treatment of women in our society is the barometer of the health of a society. So where women are sheltered, where they're protected, and that protection doesn't mean dominated or controlled, it means respected. And unfortunately we can see that, there is, the material world is a very dangerous place for women. So it's very important that men take on that role, that they do ensure the safety of women. And in the marriage, the husband and wife are considered the best friends of each other. They work together cooperatively. They may have different roles. Maybe the husband's at home with the kids and the wife is the breadwinner. Or maybe the wife is at home with the kids and the husband's a breadwinner. And, they work together in a partnership. That's the whole benefit. And what I've seen successful marriages, it has always been when the husband and wife are best friends. And they're working, in collaboration with each other. It's very important. And Prabhupada often revealed his care for women, and I'm just going to conclude with this other very wonderful pastime that one of my godbrothers told me about. It's set in Philadelphia in 1975. In July 75, after Prabhupada arrived at the Philadelphia temple, it quickly became apparent the temple was much too small to seat all the devotees who had come to hear Srila Prabhupada. And of course, when Prabhupada was in a temple, everyone from everywhere would come to visit that temple. So everything would be so crowded with devotees, they'd be everywhere, sleeping in hallways, crashing in cars, just because Prabhupada was there, everyone would try and come and see Prabhupada. As the GBCs, and all the devotees had come to hear his first lecture, his arrival address. As the GBCs, the sannyasis and the brahmacharis followed Prabhupada inside, the women lingered outside, running to the windows to get a glimpse of his divine grace. Inside, Prabhupada sat on the Vyasasana, surveying the scene. As the leader snuggled close to his lotus feet, Prabhupada's gaze fell upon the window, where his women disciples were pressing their noses like bees desperately trying to get to the honey inside. Prabhupada looked concerned, even alarmed. At the airport, hadn't he just told the press how we give everyone, men, women, young, old, black, white, equal opportunity to pursue Krishna consciousness? With fatherly compassion, Prabhupada's voice came over the mic. Let them inside, they want to hear. One by one, his spiritual daughters walked in, beaming with gratitude at Prabhupada, who kept pushing his men closer and closer together to make room for these eager hearers. And later, after a sky-high kirtan, you can see practically what Prabhupada saying is, the woman is dancing, a man is dancing, so dancing everyone, it is automatic. Realizing God in relationship with God, we are all servants of Krishna. And I remember once in Mayapur, Prabhupada was there for 2 months, and every day he would give a darshan. We would go and sit there, and Prabhupada would talk, or sometimes Prabhupada would just chant, just depended. And this one time I was late, so it was a small room and I couldn't fit in. And I remember standing at the doorway, and Prabhupada's room in Mayapur had 2 entrances, one on this side of the corridor and then around the other side of the corridor. And I was so disappointed that there was no room for me. It was packed tight.
And Prabhupada saw me standing there. You could see from the look on my face that I was crestfallen. And then very elegantly Prabhupada looked at me and he just went like that, meaning run around and come to the other side. So I went running around the corridor to come to the other side. And then Prabhupada's going like that to the devotees, move over, make room for her. So, Prabhupada had such care and such concern, when my god sister Pavika had a tear in her sari, and Prabhupada noticed it, and he gave money so that she could buy a new sari. And then there's that very famous story where I think it was in New Vrindavan, it was winter, and one of the girls just had she didn't have warm clothes on, and she was literally shivering. And Prabhupada kept on asking her, "Are you cold?" And she just didn't realise Prabhupada was talking to her. "Are you cold? Are you not cold?" And she didn't answer. And then the temple president said to Prabhupada, "Oh, no, she's not cold." And Prabhupada said, she's shivering. And then he told the temple president, he said, "Once a month, you have to go around to all the ladies in the temple and ask them, do they need anything?" So that was the mood Prabhupada had. And that mood should be reflected in how we care, not only for women, but that we care for each other is very, very important. So Hare Krishna, thank you for listening. Is there any comments, questions? Jai Sri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.